Hello, everyone. I am unsure. Great. We're good to go. Perfect. So welcome everyone to this session where we'll speak about why we need to democratize access to startup equity. And today we'll have a first part where we'll speak about questions such as why giving a fair share of ownership leads to happier and more productive teams. And then at the end, we would actually love to also leave plenty of space for questions. So by you, the audience. So really also, as we go, feel free to use the Q&A tab to put your questions. And before we start, I would love for us speakers to quickly introduce ourselves. So Rodolphe, over to you.
Thank you, Yoko. Very happy to be here. So I'm Rodolphe Ardant. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spendesk. What does Spendesk? We provide finance team with a way to manage their whole operating spending. So basically allowing employees to access the company money when they need, and giving the mic over to Fabian.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. Pleasure to speak to everyone here. So I'm one of the founders of WeFox, and WeFox is a fast-growing digital insurance company that focuses on indirect distribution, so supporting the human being to be tech-enabled in order to provide a digital journey to the end consumer. We've been building this up for the last 6-7 years now, active across 5 markets. And one of the things that I think has allowed us to be more successful than many of our competitors is the entire topic of equity. And that's why I'm really happy to speak about it, because it's something that I think is very close to my heart, something that we've been living since the very beginning, and that I hope that many more will also use. That's why I'm super happy to speak about it today.
Thanks so much. And yes, my name is Yoko Spirig. I am one of the founders and CEO of Ledgy. And Ledgy is the platform that helps you manage everything from your cap table, employee participation plan, so everything around your ownership. And most importantly, it allows startups to make sure that their teams understand the value of ownership. So yeah, I'm super excited to kick off this session. Rodolphe, Fabian, I would say let's dive right in. And actually, the first question I would like to ask you is more of a broader one. And that is, why do you as a leader care about the topic of ownership? So perhaps, Fabian, if you would like to start.
Yeah, so I care about it a whole lot because I think everything in life needs to be kind of in stability. And so if you run a company, then in my opinion, it's also extremely important that you have motivation and kind of clarity. And for this, I think what you need to have is you need to have a super strong purpose. So you need to have a reason for everyone and for yourself, but for everyone who goes on this crazy journey with you, to know why am I getting up in the morning, right? So for us, for example, it is that we want to be 10x, that we want to make insurance 10x better for everyone, right? So that's something that that motivates us. Then you need to have a very strong how, right? So you need to have a very ambitious goal. There's always a saying between, right? There's a fine line between a visionary and a lunatic. So you need to have a very, very ambitious goal. For some people, it's a little bit too crazy, and for other people, it motivates them. And then there is the third part, which is also, in my opinion, financial compensation and equity participation, right? So if people come in and put in their most valuable asset that we all have, which is time, right? Time is the most valuable asset that anyone can give. So if someone goes with you on this crazy journey over so many years, especially then if they join early and take a huge risk, then I think it needs to be rewarded significantly. It needs to be rewarded beyond just pure salary. And that's why us from the very beginning, we've been aiming to really get as many people as possible a portion of the organization. Because this way, then I think next to a strong purpose, next to a strong goal, there was also a financial upside, and this I think makes it then a equilibrium which allows everyone to have their mind free and just continue to focus on really achieving this gigantic vision together.
Great answer. Thank you so much, Fabian. And I can also resonate with many of things you said. And Rodolphe, how about you? How does it look like for you at Spendesk?
That's a very good question, Yoko. So since the very early days at Spendesk, it was clear to us that every employees of the company should have access to ownership, so to equity of the company. And as a founder, it comes for two main reasons for me. The first one and the most important one is it's a question of culture, in my opinion. It's a question of culture just because I'm a strong believer in distributed ownership. What I call distributed ownership is I believe in organizations that, in their ways of working are empowering teams at every level of the company to be and to act as owner of the company success. This is also why we created Spendesk in the first place, to allow people to access the company money and to make decisions on their scope. And it would be very insincere as the founder of the company to say and to ask people to act as an owner of the company without actually being an owner, right? So I could not say, hey, this is the culture that we have. This is the kind of behavior that we want to have. This is the kind of organizations we believe in. But as a consequence, saying, I want you to act as an owner, but you're not going to be an owner of the company. So since day one, it was really clear to us that every employee in our organization should have equity in the company to benefit financially from the success that they are going to drive for the company. This was my first reason. The second one, we know that, and that resonates to what Fabian said. I mean, the success of an organization today, and particularly in the European ecosystem, is going to be the access to the right talent at the right time. With the capital that the world is having right now, I believe that one of the key bottleneck to grow and to scale a business is no more the access to capital, but is actually the access to talents. And one of the issues that we have in our European ecosystem is this lack of the flywheel compared to the Silicon Valley has not been working as much as it did there. Having, people being successful in startups, going back into the ecosystem as an entrepreneur or as an angels because they've been financially successful, which is starting to be, to prevent our organizations and our company to actually have this power of talents have been there before and then continuously can invest in the innovation in our ecosystem. So we are on a talent war, and I think our role as innovators in our field is really to feel this power in the ecosystem. That's why this participation of people in the success of their business, allowing them to get financial security in the future, to take more risks and continue to innovate is an important factor too.
Absolutely, and we'll actually get to your point around this flywheel effect that is so important for an ecosystem right after, and yeah, totally also resonate with your point around that. Essentially, equity ownership is a continuation of having ownership as a value in your company. So it's like a natural continuation of that. And yeah, I think one point I would add to all what you two said is that I personally think that ownership is actually similar to, for instance, diversity, in the sense that number one, it's the right thing to do to reward the talent that helped build the company, and number two, it is also really contributing to the success of the company. So it let's say is the right thing to do and makes business sense in that sense, as does diversity. So it's a win-win. Great. So now that we know, why even care about this topic, I would love to go into the second question that you already pointed a bit to, Rodolphe, and that is, according to a study by Index Ventures, European tech employees own, as of now, half of what their US counterparts own of their companies. And as you said before, ownership is super important for this flywheel effect because, in fact, employees who then, get the upside of the ownership when the company has a liquidity event, tend to actually reinvest in the startup ecosystem, be it by investing in startups or starting companies themselves. So my question to you here, and maybe to you, Rodolphe, because you already pointed on or touched on that topic. What do you think are the reasons why Europe has been lagging behind so far in this topic?
That's a very good question. And we've seen the difference between what's happened in the past 3 decades in Silicon Valley and where we are in Europe, and we clearly are lagging behind. Maybe I don't know what you think, Fabian, but one, there is a different entrepreneurial culture between the 2 regions. It's clear to me that there is a lack of education of European talents towards the value of equity. I remember many hiring conversations with, and particularly in France, with people which were more worrying about if they have access to a meal voucher, ticket restaurant, rather than their equity package. And this culture is mostly driven because in the past, because there was not this access to equity, there is not the examples like there was in Silicon Valley of the success and the potential financial upside that equity can bring. So people, they tend to say, hey, okay, I've got access to equity. I don't know what it means. So, okay, that's good. But what about my meal voucher? Which is interesting because when you hire in the US, at every role in the company, people will ask and request access to the equity of the company. Because this example of the message person in Google that was a millionaire because this person had access to equity. So the culture is very different. And the governments are not helping much in Europe, depending on the different countries compared to the US. The complexity of the different schemes, the lack of homogeneity. Hopefully in France, we are pretty happy. We've got a good system. Fabian, I'm sure that in Germany, it's very different. This is something we are trying to for ourselves on our German expansions to figure out how we can provide the same level of fairness around our different employees with the different schemes, which doesn't make the European overall policy very friendly for equity, for ownership of employees.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can. For me, it's 3 things. It's understanding its success cases, and then it's the structure that goes around it, right? So I think hopefully if we do a great job here in the next 30 minutes or so, right, then many more people will go out and pass out ownership, because you first of all need to start with having understanding. That's having understanding of the founders who are starting, but also very important, having understanding on the employee side, right? So what does it actually mean if I get this? How do I actually get something at the end, right? So this understanding, right? Making it easy, making the contracts that employees are getting easy to understand, not 20-page legal contracts, that you try, there's a connection between 1A and 5.7, right? So understanding is a starting point. That's why we try to I personally try to spend every month in a session where every employee can come if they like and ask questions around how does it actually work. The second part that is great in understanding that is obviously making it visible, right? So that goes for me starting again in the company. We, for example, use Ledgy, right? So in my opinion, a great tool. Why did I decide ultimately to implement it? Then because of the fact that one of the reasons why people didn't understand it is because they got it passed out. They signed it in the very beginning, but then never heard about it. So maybe every now and then, sometimes people heard about it, but now there's a tool that every employee can look into, can log on and just see, where am I standing my vesting? How much is it worth today? So that alone, this makes it significantly more tangible. And that brings me also to number 2 then, right? So understanding then success cases. We need to have many more success cases. We need to speak about success cases, right? We need to make sure that it's visible so that people understand it's not something, a piece of paper, but it's actually worth something. And once we achieve this, then we can go to the hardest part, which is what you've been referring to also a little bit, the bureaucratic system. In Germany, it's a big mess. And there's a couple of countries that are much more advanced, but generally it's just not anywhere close where it is in the US as of today, because I think the politicians haven't understood yet that, and you saw it in Germany, there were elections, and you saw the election pictures, and then they were having big industrial pictures then where all of the people from the different parties were on it, right? And it's like, well, but that's not going to be how it's going to look like in 4, 8, 12, 16 years from today. So the people also on the politician side need to get there, but that's going to be the hardest part. So I would say we stay with the understanding and the success cases, and that would hopefully then change the picture so that in 10 years from today, also in Europe, we're going to have significantly more equity ownership distributed out.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
The idea of what you mentioned, Fabian, about the example of success. This is something we had discussions with many employees, telling me, hey, I've been in 3 startups before. There was no any upside for me. So they don't consider the value of equity. So showing these examples of successful, European businesses, which are more and more frequent. And here, that's also where we've got a difference between the US, because we are on the 2nd or 3rd generations of businesses that have been reaching this kind of scale, that have this ambition of being a global leader, which was not the case, whereas in the US, it's like the 10th or 15th generation. So the lack of examples for people is also, as we start to have these examples, it really brings this value and this understanding of the equity value.
And just one more thing, because I can only echo this, and here my thing is just, it doesn't always need to be the end result, right? So it doesn't always need to be there is an exit event or something like this. You could also have, if you're an entrepreneur and you're out there today and you're listening, right? So there can also be situations that's on the journey. So you have a successful fundraise and you put a portion of the fundraise, maybe not in the first rounds when every euro, right, obviously needs to be invested, but when you're a little bit more along in the journey, then you can use it in order to offer to employees that you buy back a portion of the shares, right, that have been given out. And this is such an important moment, because then things become tangible, because you see it, it's the next level of a tangible, right? You see it on the bank account, right? And that's also something that we done as part of the round. We've raised our Series C, and we set aside a certain portion of the round in order to offer the opportunity, not a demand, but offer the opportunity for employees to just get a bit of cash.
Totally, and thanks for touching on that subject. Is also one of the topics we wanted to address also later, to also learn a couple of tips and tricks from you who have done that already. I think totally resonate with what you said. So really, success culture is one, policy is another big one, and then there is understanding. One further one I would add, as one of the founders of Ledgy as well, is definitely the ease of granting ownership. So just to let you know, one of our very first customers, in fact, one of the reasons also we founded Ledgy in the first place was before using Ledgy, was using a spreadsheet where he had essentially one single line for one single share, so hundreds of thousands of lines, where you can simply imagine how error-prone and cumbersome this process was, especially because he already had employee participation plans. So this was not very encouraging for him to continue doing that. So we try to make it easy, and number two, also make it really transparent and understandable for the entire team about what is equity and what is the value. So yes, that is great. And I think one last question I would love to tackle before we switch gears is on the policy level, because I think we have the chance to have you, Fabian, here with us today, and I think you've been quite active also on the policy level. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would love to. I'd be super curious to hear from you. An update. What is the current status on the policy level from your perspective in Europe?
Yeah, a very good, very tough question. So I generally do not want to go into politics or have anything to do with just one topic that is very close to my heart, as said, and so I just see that, right? It's so important to give people access to equity from the very beginning. And as said, for me, these 3 steps around understanding success cases, and then you need to look into the policy/bureaucratic system that we're in, and need to help them also to understand it. And I can say that I got a little bit involved there. It's a very difficult process, really, to get things done. And here, I think it's really because politicians are really focused on just winning the ultimate elections and securing their downside. So in case 9 people would profit from this, but 1 person could somehow try to find to use it then in a negative way, right? And they have to watch out for this kind of negative case. Hence, really, it's something that is definitely really difficult. At the same time, I think that's going to be the one topic that I will continue to be fighting for. I will try my efforts in the beginning in Germany, because that's, I think, the starting point, and then hopefully we can, with the connection of, I don't know, together with Deutsche Startups and Bitkom and others, that we kind of use this in order to kind of get the understanding also of the people. And then obviously what would help me in this a lot would be additional success cases, would be additional cases where you say, look, we've been able to generate, I don't know, in Germany startup system, 1.2 million jobs already today. In the future, we've just seen HelloFresh, Delivery Hero, I don't know, more companies gone into the DAX, so the biggest index in Germany, right? So this kind of, the change is starting and is becoming more relevant. And we need to make sure that kind of we use this. And the way I try to sell it to politicians a little bit is that you're going to have, as you say, also, Rodolphe, as you said, right, you're going to have the war for talent. And there's going to be a couple of different locations across Europe that can be chosen. And Berlin is in a very good position for this. Berlin is a very attractive city. You still have very good living costs. So something that can be done. And now it's just around, where do you create this Silicon Valley of Europe? And for this reason, we just need to have also a different kind of taxation system, a different policy system, just making it easy to distribute, and making it also very, very attractive, so that the people who then ultimately come out of university and, I don't know, can decide whatever they want to do, that they from the beginning go into, risky companies, the people that are advanced in their careers, who could make big salaries, that decide to go into these young companies, build these young companies that are going to be the future.
Agree. And just as a founder, honestly, the lack of uniformity at the European level is really it drives a lot of complexity. So even it's not only the lack of uniformity, there is so much difference towards the local regulations, etc., that you need to put so much effort to understand. Because in the end, again, on a cultural perspective, you want to have one team working on a common mission with a common ambition, right? And you want to have fairness across the board. So it's like, okay, I've got people working in France and being hired in France. We've got this BSPC scheme, which is working well because on a cost perspective for the company and simplicity, it's working well. And then you're opening your office in Germany and you want to provide the same level of equity for German employees. And it's like, oh, okay, it's going to cost this amount of money, and these people are going to get taxed by this amount of money. So you need to and there is no fairness across the board. So it's like you try to find a way to provide this fairness, and it brings extra complexity and it's hard to manage. So at some point, it's very tempting to say, oh, okay, we need to roll back and we are no more going to provide the same level of equity across the business. That's a big blocker. For us, you just want to bring if we think at this European perspective and maybe tomorrow at this global perspective, we need to provide the same fairness for every employee working to building the company, wherever the talents are. You want them to be able to work for your company if they are, if they believe in this common mission that you are operating. So there is a lot of work to do here on the policymakers to help having this something much more harmonized at the European level. I believe we can do it, but there is still a big challenge to at least first highlight having every European countries at least having a scheme that works, and then we can uniformize there.
And is something in France already happening? Because it feels like that Macron at least understood it in a bit more detail than many other politicians across Europe. At least, I don't know, he at least starts the conversation with startups, while German politicians, I think, are not even open to speak to startups, or only, I don't know, if they can try to use it for election purposes, I don't know, which is not the right thing. But Macron seems to be more interested. Do you see anything happening in France these days?
Yeah, it's very, at least it's very friendly. The chance to push the politics very friendly towards the startup ecosystem. And on the equity level, the law is actually changing every year to help and facilitate the access to equity. For example, last year there was a change in the finance law that allowed to reduce the strike price of the stock options, like in the UK on the EMI scheme, which was not the case in France. You had to have a strike price, which was at least the last valuation of the company. It allowed also subsidiary to issue, so foreign companies to issue French BSPCE schemes. So it's going really on the right way.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, did you want to add something, Fabian?
No, I think it would be,
okay.
If we can somehow achieve this, to have a unified system, I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, I think it's a long road to get everyone to understand. So we need to see, right? It's always important to see a little bit kind of what can we do and what are the small steps that help it a little bit. And so let's hope, we can get it on the people's agendas, get them to understand how important it is for the future, how important it is for the countries, how important it is for Europe as a whole. So hopefully we can do much more, and some of them are listening.
Exactly, absolutely.
That's a huge difference with the US, sorry, Yoko, because they've got these big markets. Europe is a big market, but very domestic and local ones. And we want to provide this capability to address this market and get the right talents at the European scale. That's how we are going to compete and build these tech giants on a global scale, but coming from Europe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So exactly as you said, key topic, I think, for our ecosystem here in Europe, really super important, and great that we're talking about this at an event such as today. And also, I think for everyone listening, I think number one is really talking about it, be aware of it. Also, not wait for policies to change to give ownership. We're entrepreneurs, so we want to make things move fast. And there are also campaigns that are actually really trying to make things move forward, such as Not Optional by Index Ventures, or ESOP ASAP in Germany. So I would encourage everyone to really follow these campaigns, sign these petitions, and really commit for this important topic for the European ecosystem. Great. I think the next question I would love to learn from you, Rodolphe and Fabian, is around education. We talked about it right before, But I think for our audience, it would be super interesting to really hear more of the practical tips from you as leaders of large companies. So the central question would be, how do you at your companies tackle the education part of the equity? Because for many employees who are new to the tech space, it's not necessarily obvious to understand all these mechanics, and when you don't understand something, then you tend to value it less. So the question is really, how do you have any tips for education around ownership?
Yeah.
Maybe Fabian, if you'd like to start.
You can. Yeah. So the way that we do it is by having. So I started then when I realized that the understanding went down also in the organization. I did like a complete company event where everyone was invited. They wanted to come, and then we just spoke about the topic, how does it work, and now, right, we're doing these kind of monthly sessions. Plus, right, it always starts within. So I also make sure that our people team also has a very good understanding of it, so that it starts always at the very beginning, so that everyone who joins understands how we do it, how the concept really works, and at which point in times, right? And for this, in order to spread this a little bit, we've recently actually shared also this presentation that we use. So it should be flying around somewhere. So if you Google WeFox equity ownership, I hope you should be able to find it. If not, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share it with you, right? And the idea was then just that you can learn for a little bit. You can use the things that you like from it in order to also educate it. If you don't like it, then you can do it differently. But it's a lot of speaking. It's a lot of time, and then really it's these kind of events that make it tangible, like viewing it on a tool, like being able to buy it back and making it as tangible as possible, and then just openly speak about it with everyone. And I think that's really something that I would urge everyone to just kind of fit into the day, because if you're founding a company, you're extremely busy. You have so many things to be done. But really spending time on this will make people understand, will make people value it more, and ultimately also then kind of be able to work stronger on the purpose.
No, that's great. I think we try to do a good job, but it's not enough. So as you say, Fabian, it's asking a lot of time and a lot of commitment. There is two things. There is education of employees of the company, and there is also education of people that we bring. So during the interview process, etc. On the second one, I think we still need to improve, honestly, trying to give them materials to get this understanding, etc. Internally, we are running. So we've got to try to make a complete document on an employee perspective on how it works for them. So not going into the too much legal terms or expertise terms, but to be very practical on what does it mean, what strike price means, how options work. Is it free money? No, this is something you need to purchase at some time. So all these things that are not natural, so people don't understand the mechanism or don't have knowledge about the mechanism of stock options. It can still be improved. We've got regular workshops, particularly during allocations, making sure that we share and there is people can ask all the questions they can have. And then there is, this education about the value of equity. And this is something that Fabian touched and you also touched upon before, is taking every liquidity event for employees as an opportunity for communication. So for example, for us, we allowed liquidity for employees as soon as the founders had liquidity. So they started on our Series B and again on our Series C. So now on every funding event, there is a liquidity event for the team. So everyone that have vested equity can take the option, if they want, to sell their share once we've got a fundraising. There is new also interesting services, startups that are launching right now that try to provide a full liquidity all time for employees. It's not something we are using right now because we had enough funding event almost every year to provide this liquidity, but allowing people to participate and transform this value into cash if they've got some personal projects, particularly for early employees. At some point, you've been working hard for the past 4 years, you want to purchase an apartment, and that's where you can transform the value of your work in something that impact your personal life. So that's super important, and we want to communicate on that.
Yeah, and the last thing that just came to my mind is also then, as Rodolphe was kind of speaking about this, so is ambassadors. So, right, we need to do as much as we can, but ultimately you need to have a few people within the organization who are ambassadors, who have a full, good understanding, and who then, because you can only do so much, and you're the company, you're representing the company, initiating it. If there's a few people, right, who understand it well and they speak to then outside informally around this obviously helps it. And then here, a practical tip for me, the way that we've been passing it out is that we try to make it very similar. So, for example, we started from the beginning. There's also really different concepts. So the way we've done it is in a very easy example. If there's a person that came in and made, 100,000 euros before market value, but we were only able to pay 60,000 in cash, right? Because that was kind of the maximums. Then we paid the other 40,000 in shares and gave a risk premium then on top, right? So that people could say, okay, missing out in this then over 4 years, right? And so this way then people understood, okay, I'm going there, I'm missing out on a bit of salary, I get equity in the same amount or slightly more with the risk premium on top. I have the risk that it might not be worth anything, right? But I have the upside that in case we, succeed together, then it's going to be significantly more. And this, I think, was we always used this very basic Excel in order to just do these calculations based on the most recent value per share. I think that's something that has worked well for us. There's, again, here also multiple different ways, but that's something that we've done and worked well for us.
Great. Yeah. So totally also resonate with the ambassador and that dedicated person who really is able to answer all questions in a personal way. That's also what we do at Ledgy. We have every month a session for all new joiners where we really go through the entire ownership and explain everything there. Also, don't want to do too much self-promotion here, but definitely I think using a software such as Ledgy really helps. So for us, for our product, the employee experience is really a central part of the software. So having a single source of truth on which every employee has a login, can see not only their ownership, but also have different scenarios of what the outcome of the company could be, really helps just to make things clear and transparent. And last but not least, I think I'd love to actually follow up now on what you said, Rodolphe, before about earlier liquidity. So essentially in a financing round, opening up secondary transactions for employees, for instance. And there, my question would be really concretely and practically, how has your experience been with offering secondary transactions, and at what stage do you think it makes sense to start doing that as a startup?
So on our experience, we started doing it at Series B. It's very practical, just because on Series A, no one has vested ownership in the company, right? So you start, it depends on the level of growth, but most of the time, for us, Series A comes very early on. So as soon as you've got a vesting schedule and a cliff period, which is basically between 12 months or 18 months as a standard cliff for businesses. During your Series A, no one has vested equity apart of the founders, and it's not a moment where investors would like to see a liquidity event because it's still very early days for the businesses. But as soon as for us Series B, we started to open liquidity events, and again for us, I'm not differentiating. I've seen some startups doing it, but it's more a question of mindset. For us, we are not differentiating when founders can have liquidity if they want and when employees. For me, as soon as we've got vested ownership, everyone should access to the same liquidity events. There is a question of appetite for investors also towards, okay, what's the volume of liquidity of secondary they want to purchase. But then once you get the appetite, you know how you want to frame it to make it fair for everyone. And the conditions that we had was as soon as you have vested ownership, you could sell up to 20% of your total equity package.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I think we did it quite similar. We did it for the first time as part of the Series C, that we started to also offer the opportunity to have a secondary event, and we did it very similar. We did it as a portion of the vested shares were offered, and then it was at the decision of the individual whether they liked to then cash in a certain portion or keep it and continue basically on the potential upside that might come in the future, right? And I think. Yeah, I would these are these little kind of success events. I think that help, that make it tangible, and then hopefully also make more people want to have equity. And so it feels like at least that for us, it made this it gave it within the company already like another jump of what people value on equity ownership, and we had a couple of more inbounds that kind of came in of people who are looking to see, hey, could I, now potentially reduce a bit of salary and get kind of shares. So I think it's definitely something that needs to be the time. I'd say from the start, always as early as possible to give out equity. So from the very beginning, the first people are extremely important. And then, I think you need to be a little bit more advanced. So once you have, the first foothold, I think across your markets, that's important.
It's interesting also to see that investors have a different perspective on liquidity events for employees and for founders. I really saw two different philosophies. You've got investors that are really reluctant towards liquidity for employees, and investors that are purely supportive, very supportive. It's not clear to me again. What would be the drawbacks of offering liquidity? One of the arguments I got was, for example, if people get too much cash right now, they're not going to be motivated anyway with the company. I don't believe in that. I believe that if people are not going to work on the company just because of the monetary impact that they have, you've got a problem, which is bigger than providing them the liquidity here. So no, for me, I never see any drawbacks in providing that. On the contrary, it's purely virtuous.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing these super concrete tips, which I'm sure are very interesting, not only also for me, but also for the audience. And actually, we don't have too much time left, I see, and I'd love to also open up the Q&A. That being said, I would love to ask you a very last question, because we're at the CFO Connect Summit. There are a lot of CFOs here listening. And I think the one of the last questions that are interesting is, you both are running companies that are pan-European, so you're employing in many countries in Europe. Is there anything you could advise when it comes to giving ownership in different countries in Europe? Anything that comes to mind? Any advice?
Yeah, so we had we had a bit of a journey there, because we said, okay, we're in insurance, distribution in insurance is very local. and we were thinking everything through from the very beginning. We had kind of even starting with physical ownerships and local entities, which is definitely not something that should be done because it kind of hinders you on future financing rounds. So don't do that. We tried to implement what we called a country pool, where depending on the performance of the country, you got more or less. That meant though you had 20% of Germany, but you never had a clue ultimately what this will mean, because then this would have been looked at a cash event, and so there was not really that much. There's not really that much value put on top. Hence, I personally would say always just go with the top co. They're joint results. Everyone needs to understand and play a significant role in these joint results, and everything should roll up to a few clear to understand targets at the top co. That would be, from my experience, definitely my recommendation.
Yeah, I totally agree, Fabian. For us, when we expanded Europe, we hired lawyers to explain us what was the different schemes in the different countries, and try to find what would be the equivalent, the local equivalent. All equity is always on the top companies. We are not providing equity on the different subsidiaries. It brings a nightmare in terms of complexity. You really want to have your top company being 100% owner of your subsidiaries, at least for us, and then providing equity on the top co. In France, we've got the BSPC scheme. We made an equivalent for our lawyers to the AMI scheme in the UK. In Germany, because it's not clear right now, we are having a pure stock option plan that we try to configure in a way that it's fair across the board. But honestly, it's still a nightmare. So on the management side, but yeah, in terms of paperwork and particularly during liquidity events when we need to figure out what it means in terms of tax declarations, etc. for every country. So as we grow, it's going to be more and more complex. So practical tips here is it's costing money, but it's important to be well advised and well consulted with the right lawyers, with the right experts, because the mistakes that you can make in the early days can jeopardize the full plan, the full equity plan that you're having, and in the end, it could be, it can be an important liability of the company.
And can I just say one thing, because I was just reading through the Q&A, and there was one question around how do you deal with levers? Should you take vested shares away, and all of these things? And it's just for me, the program needs to be as easy to understand as possible. It needs to be as employee friendly as possible, right? If there's any nuances around this that would take things away in the future, it just makes it complex, and then you maybe take away from one person that maybe has then would have stayed a little bit, but ultimately you kind of destroy the value with 20, 30 other people because they don't understand it. So really, I would always say, get a lawyer, tell them, make it as employee friendly as possible, make it as easy as possible, right? Make it as short as possible. They will tell you, oh no, you need to have all of this, you need to have this, and they tell them, no, I'm the client, you're the lawyer. Make it employee friendly, because only this way you will be able to get the buy-in.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Fabian, for sneaking in a question from the audience. I am so sorry we are running out of time, but I looked at them and it seems that many of them, so for example, the top voted one around, how to simplify processes. I think Rodolphe answered it well. There is a certain degree of processes, but at the end of it, it's really an investment we need to make, and the upside, as we've been talking through in this session, is really important for everyone in the company. And I'm sure, so I would like to call it a wrap at this point, because we're running out of time, but I'm sure that we're all of us three here are very much open to share more knowledge around this topic. So feel free to reach out to any one of us. From me, yoko@ledgy.com. You can just drop me an email. Rodolphe and Fabian, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah,
email is good for me. Yeah, sorry, Rodolphe@spendesk.com or just LinkedIn.
Yeah, me too. LinkedIn or fabian.wesemann@wefox.com is my email. So yeah, feel free.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been an incredible session. I learned a lot, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yoko.